State and local governments are pretty much the backbone of our communities. But for the last few years, they've been in a total state of crisis. So today, we're going to dig into what's changed, what hasn't, and what it all means for you. And we're using brand new 2025 survey data to do it. Let's dive in. Remember seeing help wanted signs practically everywhere? All those news stories about shortages of teachers, police officers, sanitation workers? Yeah, that was the reality for public sector jobs just a couple years back. It really felt like a permanent crisis. But has the tide actually turned? Well, the answer, it's not quite as simple as you might think. Because you see, this isn't just about filling empty seats. The pandemic and the whole Great Resignation thing acted like a massive catalyst. It forced this deep reevaluation of, well, everything, from who's even qualified for a job to what a government career should look like. The old playbook, it's been completely tossed out the window. So, what's the big headline here? Well, for the first time in years, you can almost hear this collective sigh of relief coming from city halls and state agencies. That hiring frenzy, that constant state of panic, it's finally starting to cool down. I mean, just look at this trend. Back in 2022, nearly 70% of governments were just bleeding staff faster than they could possibly replace them. People were leaving in droves. Fast forward to now, and that number has been cut by 2/3. That is a massive shift towards stability, and it tells us that, people are actually starting to stay put again. So, what does this actually mean for you in your day-to-day life? Well, it means that when you call 911, there's a much better chance an experienced dispatcher is on the other end of the line. It means the roads get plowed faster after a snowstorm. It means the public services you really rely on are more likely to be there, fully staffed when you need the most. But look, this stability didn't just happen by magic. It's really the result of this quiet revolution in how governments even think about hiring. They didn't just sit around and wait for the storm to pass. No, they were forced to basically rebuild the ship while it was still in the middle of the ocean. And this might be the biggest change of all. For generations, right, a 4-year degree was kind of the golden ticket to a good government job. But that is changing, and it's changing fast. Now, the question isn't, where did you go to school? It's, what can you do for us right now? This is all about breaking something called the paper ceiling. This idea that a piece of paper, a diploma, is more important than years of practical, real-world experience. For way too long, it's been this invisible wall, and governments are finally starting to take a sledgehammer to it. Just let that sink in for a second. In just a few short years, more than half of all public employers in the country have looked at their old hiring practices and said, you know what? We care more about what you can do than where you went to college. This is a fundamental change in the very DNA of public sector hiring. It's huge. This whole shift just blows the doors wide open for people who have spent their careers in the trenches, right? We're talking about the mechanics who can actually fix a fleet of snowplows, the IT pros who learn to code on their own time, the community organizers who know their neighborhoods inside and out. It's all about valuing skills over credentials. Okay, but the good news doesn't tell the whole story, because while some departments are finally getting a handle on hiring, others are still very much in crisis mode. And the ones that are struggling, they're the ones we absolutely cannot afford to let fail. And this is where the problem gets really serious. The jobs that are the absolute hardest to fill are the ones that keep our communities safe, healthy, and, moving. We're talking about the frontline workers who are always the first to respond in any crisis. Seriously, this list says it all. Engineering, policing, nursing, dispatch, corrections. These are the jobs that form the absolute foundation of a functioning society. And in every single one of them, more than half of all governments trying to hire are struggling to find people. This is nothing short of a 5-alarm fire for public services. And remember, these aren't just numbers on a page. These are the people who run into burning buildings when everyone else is running out. These are the people who make sure our bridges don't collapse. When these jobs go unfilled, the consequences, well, they can be a matter of life or death. Now, as that immediate hiring pressure has started to fade for some, a new and kind of surprising trend has popped up. With a little more breathing room, HR departments are reevaluating what's truly important, and their new list of priorities, well, it might not be what you'd expect. Okay, take this for example. The survey asked leaders to rate how important different initiatives were. In 2024, 41% said workforce diversity, equity, and inclusion was very important. A year later,
that dropped all the way down to 28%. That is a huge drop in a really short amount of time.
So, what's going on here? Well, the report itself offers some clues. It suggests this shift could be linked to changing policies, or, and this is interesting, maybe to the fact that representation has actually increased, which might make it feel like a less urgent issue for some organizations.
And it's not just DEI, by the way. As the hiring market has cooled off, so has the urgency to offer things like higher pay and more flexible work schedules. It's a classic case of what happens when the immediate pressure is off. But it really makes you wonder, is that a sustainable strategy for the long run?
And that brings us to our final and maybe most critical point. The public sector has definitely proven it can adapt to a crisis, but are the fixes they put in place actually setting them up for long-term success, or were they just about surviving the day? And this right here, this is probably the single most alarming statistic in the entire report. Nearly two-thirds, 61% of all governments have no formal plan for who's going to lead them into the future. That's like a ship's captain retiring without ever training a single person to take the helm. It's a huge gamble. Just think about all the knowledge and experience in fields like engineering, public safety, and administration that is about to just walk out the door forever. We're on the verge of a massive brain drain that could leave our public services totally rudderless. Without a plan, we're basically sailing into the next big storm completely unprepared. And that's really the question we're left with, isn't it? The last few years forced some incredible adaptation, like breaking the paper ceiling and stabilizing the workforce. But fighting today's fire is one thing. Preventing the next one, that's a whole different ballgame. The data shows real progress, for sure, but it also screams that there's a critical need to look beyond the immediate crisis and build a truly resilient workforce for the future.